Hi, my name is Ginny, also known as Two-Thirds Lotus, and this clip is part of my series analyzing the Essential Bukowski, edited by Abel DeBrito. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as it was streamed on Twitch, with all the imperfections and tangents of a live stream. If you want to learn more or catch me live, make sure to check out the description, otherwise enjoy the incredible work of Charles Bukowski. Here's Swastika Star, Button to My Ass, by Charles Bukowski. Sitting around here burning spiders to death with my cigar. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. Bukowski is a very vulgar poet. I did it in fireplaces, on fire escapes, in cornfields, in mother's bedroom, parentheses, with mother, parentheses, sometimes. Between bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne, over the sink of the men's crapper, in a train passing through Utah. I've done it sober, potted, crazy and sane. I've done it when I wanted to and when I haven't wanted to. I've done it with women twice my age and women half my age. I've done it with animals. I've done it with dead meat, beefsteak, and melted butter. And I've used my hand. Now, the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. I am going to rob a bank or beat the hell out of a blind man any day now, and they'll never know why. Swastika Star Button to My Ass. That is quite the striking poem, right? Bukowski has this tendency to use deeply vulgar language, and this is probably the most so that we've seen of him on stream, and it's interesting, and I think there's more to it than perhaps just what Bukowski is saying about sex, and that's why we analyze. But I'm going to read it again. Swastika Star Buttoned to My Ass, by Charles Bukowski. Sitting around here, burning spiders to death with my cigar. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. I did it in fireplaces, on fire escapes, in cornfields, in mother's bedroom, with mother, sometimes. Between bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne, over the sink of the men's crapper, in a train passing through Utah. I've done it sober, potted, crazy, and sane. I've done it when I wanted to and when I haven't wanted to. I've done it with women twice my age and with women half my age. I've done it with animals. I've done it with dead meat, beefsteak, and melted butter, and I've used my hand. Now the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. I am going to rob a bank or beat the hell out of a blind man any day now, and they'll never know why. Swastika Star Button to My Ass. I'm gonna kick a dwarf because he can't reach the front porch. Boom, offensive language. Yeah, and sometimes Bukowski feels like this. My man does not discriminate. I would say so. Yeah, and that's the thing about Bukowski is I've yet to find something I find generally genuinely hateful in a Bukowski poem. Because he does not discriminate. He is he is vulgar and crass in reference to all and any. I forgot what a swastika was until right now, but now that I remember, obviously it's not a star shape. So, yeah, uh, it is not. And that's interesting, right? There is a lot going on in this poem, and one of the most interesting things to me is the title. Yeah, he's talking about mixing it with the Star of David. Yeah, so that's one kind of meaning of a swastika star, and Star of David, symbol of Judaism, swastika, Nazism, and it's a fascinating title, right? A fascinating title for a poem that is mostly just talking about Bukowski's life of sex. And we probably ought find a connection there and figure out what is he talking about. The title grabbed my attention more than half of the poem. Yeah, I find the title, especially given the content of the poem, one of the most interesting things happening here. And there are probably a lot of things we can pull from it. And I think we want to talk about Charles Bukowski himself. So he was born in Germany, and so Charles Bukowski was born in Prussia, Weimar, Germany, and then his dad served in World War One, and then he lived in Germany, and then they left. And Bukowski assumed his paternal ancestor had moved from Poland to Germany around 1780, as Bukowski is Polish last name, and but his whole family is German, which is interesting. I don't think he really has ties to Judaism, which is interesting. I mean, there's obvious ties of like World War II Germany, but he himself, as far as I know, was not Jewish. So this is like a very interesting thing. It's beautiful, crass, and nonsensical. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some sense to find. The weirdest part to me was in mother's bedroom with mother sometimes. Yeah, yeah. Or your mom. Your mom. But yes, he's not discerning in that regard. Basically, the poem is like, fuck it, fuck you, and everything. So this is a very possible interpretation. Just fuck everything. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter who. Fuck everything. And I'll ask you, Popeye, the Savior Man, given that these are your thoughts, two questions. How do you think the title relates to that? The poem having this meaning of just like, fuck it all, fuck everything. And this ending section. I find this ending section maybe as interesting as the title. Now the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. I am going to rob a bank or beat the hell out of a blind man any day now, and they'll never know why. What if the sexual fucking isn't literal? Ah! Interesting idea, Maytari. I like this. Not literal. This is pretty much always an option. At least an option we could try. I don't know why I put a comma there. Oh, I didn't. It was the bottom of the T. This is always an option when we're analyzing a poem. What if they are not speaking literally? What if this is a metaphor for something? So, there's a few things other than just the big middle section. I think a lot of this, I did it in, on, in, between, whatever. I've done it with, in these ways. This section is pretty much a repetition. Repetition. And it's not the same thing over and over again, but it's roughly the same idea. And I think there's some context we can grab from outside of this, which can give us maybe some ideas on Bukowski's thoughts here. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. And that's interesting to me. Mine used to be as sweet as mine used to be. Bukowski talks a lot about age. And this maybe speaks to that in some way. The title is seeming like he is saying, both Jews and Nazis are worthless to him. And indeed, everyone can go F themselves. Yeah, that's possible. Swastika star buttoned to my ass. My ass. Right? Just like whatever. Like, I don't care about that. Stick it to my ass. That is an expression, right? I love this poem, period. Yeah, I like it too. So generally, for example, shove it up my ass. A rude phrase used to tell someone angrily that you do not want or need something they are offering, right? And this could be that. Bukowski, in a way, kind of does not care, right? No care. He doesn't care about the swastika star. And the swastika star is kind of this contradiction. Because the Star of David, Judaism, swastika, Nazis, hated Jews. And this could, in that way, simply represent ideology. Yeah, it's buttoned, sure. And maybe there's a different meaning because of that. But it's a possible meaning here. Sort of running with Popeye's interpretation. It is buttoned, though. Ideology. I don't care for ideology. Maybe that's what that means. Possible. It makes sense. These are two vastly different ends of ideology in a sense. It's buttoned to his ass so he can continue to metaphorically poop on them again and again. Yeah. And the swastika star itself, Popeye, you say right, both Jews and Nazis are worthless to him. Do you find this to be just in general anyone, no matter who you are, or what do you think about the idea of this as ideology? People who are thinking too much, too hung up on all of that, and rather than sort of real life. Bukowski often associates vices, pleasure, alcohol, sex with things like real life, being an artist, not being like part of the crowd. And this could help us interpret this as a poem by Charles Bukowski, to say that people hung up on ideology. He does not care for them. All he really cares for is like pleasure in life. Sitting around here burning spiders to death with my cigar. I think the title Gets Hung Up is there to make people think politically at the time. Really, he's just saying he hates everyone equally. Could be. I think that's fair. There are some things that contribute to this interpretation, probably. Sitting around here burning spiders to death with my cigar. There's just a kind of hatefulness in this as well. This is just sort of like a sadistic killing of a thing. So perhaps Bukowski opens with a characterization of himself as just not really having regard for life. No regard, or rather than life, the living. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. How does this line fit into your interpretation, Popeye? Into him hating all of them. This is something I try to strive for in my analysis of poems, is saying how can every line contribute to what I think the poet is saying? Because if they have lines here that don't really fit into like my narrative that I put on the poem, then maybe it's not actually one that's overarchingly accurate to their intent or just comprehensive of all the words there. I disagree with this interpretation. I believe the point is more detailed. He hates everyone equally, and everyone has to go fuck themselves. But I haven't figured out what I think. Okay, good, Maytari. I am, I like that you think there's something different. You think there's something more to this, because there very well could be. And I'm not totally sold on Popeye's interpretation, which is why I'm challenging it. But we can see if we can structure Popeye's into something that seems more valid, and then also think about other interpretations that might come from this. He is saying, I hope you all are as happy as I once was. Because of all your hatred. Okay. He's saying, I hope you're all as happy as I once was. Because all of your hatred, here I am. Because all of your hatred. So they have some hatred in them? The others? Other people have hatred? What tells you that? I do think this idea of them being happy and maybe him no longer being happy, that could make sense. Sweetness, pleasantness, happiness. And so now he is like cynical and hateful toward all if he has lost that happiness in his age. He's now cynical. He described himself as this like cynical, like grumpy, dirty old man sometimes. So that's possible. I also wonder, to go back to something I was saying earlier, and maybe to offer another idea to Meitari of a different interpretation. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. So this is something that takes a little more knowledge of Bukowski, but sex kind of often he uses to talk about life itself, or vice, or pleasure. Without these things, life is maybe no good. Bukowski talks about cigarettes as a symbol of some genuine happiness. Alcohol as well, sex particularly. So perhaps it's a broader discussion of their lives. Your lives are sweet. Mine used to be sweet. I have grown cynical. I lived in all these places. I did all these things. I lived experience. And now I am tired and old. The only things that stand up around here, this to me reads as a sort of double meaning on like sexual dysfunction. Which could make this simply a sort of really bizarre meditation on age. His pussy was once sweet and fuckable. Well, yeah. But now he hopes yours is, so he can fuck you. I do like that. That fits within your interpretation. I'm probably way off, but I think maybe he wants to take innocence away from people like his innocence was. Oh, that's a very interesting idea. Bukowski fled Germany to flee war. Let's see. Let's look at Charles Bukowski in a little more depth. And we're gonna use Wikipedia, which I know isn't like always the best. Here's Wikipedia. Okay. And here, let me put Twitch down here. Okay, here's Wikipedia. Early years. And we haven't actually talked a ton about Bukowski's life, but his mother, Katarina Bukowski, was the daughter of Wilhelm Fett and Nanette Israel. Interesting. But widespread among Catholics, so that's not to speak to Judaism. Avisis, hello, welcome. We're reading Bukowski right now because there was no one around at the start of stream. Okay. So I moved to mid-city LA. Bukowski's father was often unemployed. The autobiographical Ham on Rye, Bukowski says that with his mother's acquiescence, his father was frequently abusive, both physically, mentally, beating his son for the smallest imagined offense. Beat him with a razor strop. Yikes. Okay. Oh, that's not pleasant. 3 times a week from the ages 6 to 11. He says that it helped his writing as he came to understand undeserved pain. Bukowski spoke English with a strong German accent, as was taunted as a kid, so he got bullied, had acne, ridiculed, didn't have like the right popular clothing. he got mad at the world. So, this idea of Bukowski's innocence being taken and wanting to, in some way, fight back against the world makes a lot of sense. Like, that makes sense a lot. I wonder if there's a reference to this poem at all and when it came out. Sometimes it's hard to find when Bukowski's poetry came out. There's not really good stuff on this. Yeah, he ended up Buddhist. His gravestone reads "Don't try." That's so cool. Okay. So we'll leave it at that. Here's the poem again. And so maybe he wants to take innocence away from people like his innocence was. Sitting around here burning spiders to death with my cigar. Can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. Right? He used to be innocent. He used to be untouched. And then fireplaces, fire escapes, cornfields, mother's bedroom with mother sometimes, between bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne. Saint Etienne. That's in France, right? This would have been like World War II. And so we think about this. Even within his description of like the sex, other ways his innocence was destroyed. And he has traveled and been crazy and sane and sober and high. And then this line, even in particular, I've done it when I wanted to and when I haven't wanted to. So, of course, we can think of this probably as non-consent, maybe. This could also just be doing it for no reason, no actual desire. Who knows? Also, Avisus, it's been a while. How are you? I've done it with women twice my age, with women half my age. I've done it with animals. I've done it with dead meat, beef steak, and melted butter, and I've used my hand. So now Bukowski has sort of done everything. He has nothing left, and he is broken. Now the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. So, if we're talking about this, he is no longer able to have sex, if we see this as like a double entendre. Dysfunction. I'm going to rob a bank or beat hell out of a blind man any day now, and they'll never know why. We read this on the brief biography. We can't take Wikipedia too much at its word, but I think a really, really important part, maybe the most important part of this stanza, and they'll never know why. Bukowski had hell beat out of him as a child, was taunted, tormented, abused, and probably didn't know why. What was the reason, right? Purposeless, needless violence, which he had experienced. So then this poem makes a really interesting parallel between sex as something that destroys one's innocence and violence as something that simultaneously and also destroys one's innocence. And there are also deep associations just with sex and violence together. So that actually starts to make quite a good amount of sense, Popeye the Savior Man's interpretation. If we base this upon other poems, then the others should not be hateful. The others in Bukowski's poems, from what I've seen of them, they're seen as better than normal. Just referring to like everyone else, I think sort of. I don't think Bukowski sees them as better normally. Bukowski, well, okay. Let's go back like one poem. We read this last time. I know I probably have more deep knowledge of Bukowski reading it so much. Yeah, they're different. They're societally better because they're part of society, but the genius of the crowd, there is enough treachery, hatred, violence, absurdity in the average human being to supply any given army on any given day. Bukowski does not see an equality, at least, like Popeye says, between himself and normal society. This is one of the big things to understand about Bukowski, is you have society in like one box, and you have the outcast in another. And within the box of the outcast, this is where you have like artists, criminals, like poor people, crazy people or mentally ill people. Bukowski usually just refers to as crazy. Whereas society is sane, bland. The outcasts, he seems so far to see as like fundamentally accepting. Whereas society is hateful. Society divides. Society says, society is swastikas and stars. Society is, we are one group of people and everyone else is not. We are different, or we are somewhat better and unique and everyone else is worse. That could give some context to the swastika star button to my ass. It's not that it's a swastika, it's not that it's a star, it's not that it's ideology, it's that I'm different. Maybe I am fundamentally branded by society as different. And that's the overarching idea of the poem. Maybe. That's what the title might say, given Bukowski's sort of division of himself and society. We would need to look into each of the lines to figure out if that's what we want to say. But there's something there, I think. I really hope his writings were really therapeutic for him, because he did go through a lot. Seems for no reason. Well, he wrote a lot when he was drunk. I think yes. I think Bukowski wrote because he had to, and because it helped him. He worked, at least before his writing was a thing. He worked in like a factory, and then he went home and wrote, and he kind of starved, and really like starved for his art. That's like, he is kind of the starving artist, the pinnacle of the starving artist, the tortured artist, the dirty, weird artist. And yeah, it must have helped him, I think. I would like to think that it did. I'm gonna run a quick little ad break. Probably gonna stand still in frame while the ads go. If you subscribe, you get to watch me stretch. I'm kidding. Don't watch the ads. Go do some self-care. And we'll be back in 2 minutes. And maybe we'll look at trying to find other interpretations of this poem. Wow, I stood up. It's like we're on break now. It's really funny because the camera is still running. Like, it's a break, but it's not a break, and not all of you get ads. And I'll be back. Hello. Welcome back. I'm still Ginny. Still the poet of Twitch, and still on 2/3 Lotus, the channel on Twitch. Or YouTube if you're watching there in the future. I'm going to read this poem again. We're reading Swastika Star Buttoned to My Ass by Charles Bukowski. Sitting around here burning spiders to death with my cigar, I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. I did it in fireplaces, on fire escapes, in cornfields, in mother's bedroom, with mother, sometimes. Between bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne, over the sink of the men's crapper, in a train passing through Utah. I've done it sober, potted, crazy and sane. I've done it when I wanted to and when I haven't wanted to. I've done it with women twice my age and with women half my age. I've done it with animals. I've done it with dead meats. Beefsteak and melted butter, and I've used my hand. Now the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. I am going to rob a bank or beat hell out of a blind man any day now. And they'll never know why. Swastika star button to my ass. Another little bit of text I noticed. Is any day now here? Popeye. Maybe he's using it as a metaphor for war. Okay. All war is nonsensical and screws everyone. That's possible. Let's look at that. Makes sense with swastika star. Sitting around here burning spiders to death with my cigar. Okay, there's some insinuation of violence to begin this off. Not a bad start for thinking about war. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. And I think if we look at I perhaps as some broader thing, war, then this makes sense. War fundamentally goes and it plunders and it pillages and it destroys that which is stable and established. So, taking that sweetness, you know, we associate war even with like the little phrase like rape and pillage. So perhaps that. I did it in fireplaces on fire escapes, in cornfields, in mother's bedroom with mother sometimes, between bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne. So that's of course the thing that most contributes to our war idea. But then if the entire thing was talking about war, would it say that war did war between bomb explosions during a war? Maybe. Maybe not. Over the sink of the men's crapper? In a train passing through Utah? I've done it sober, potted, crazy, and sane. It starts to look like a little bit of a reach. I've done it when I wanted to, when I haven't wanted to. That makes sense for war. I've done it with animals. I've done it with dead meats. Oh, what? Women twice my age, women half my age. And then, now the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. Going to rob a bank or beat the hell out of a blind man any day now. They'll never know why. Seems like a reach, but there is like a necessary violence in this poem. And we have Bukowski saying, I will commit some heinous act of violence any day now. There's this sort of tension. It's going to happen. It's about to. Any day now he's going to do something abhorrent. I mean, we start the poem and end the poem with him just, first, he's being passively violent. Sitting here burning spiders to death with my cigar. So he sits there, does violence. And this feels kind of contemplative as a line. Sitting around here. It just is. It's just he's there. It's happening. And we get to the end of the poem. Passively ruminating on violence. And almost containing this outburst of violence. I'm going to rob a bank or beat hell out of a blind man any day now. These days. Now, the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. And this, I think, continuing this as like the sexual dysfunction double meaning, I'm fairly confident about that. Rod's standing up straight, his does not. Erectile dysfunction, double meaning. And even himself, old, crooked. Now that he cannot have sex. Sex which was perhaps a sort of violent release. We mentioned this. There's this association with sex and violence. And so that life of sex allowed him to in some way be sated, of these deeply, like, violent, controlling power dynamic urges. Which is, like, not a great way to see sex, but as long as it's not the other person who didn't want to, as long as, like, that's consensual, and Bukowski is not known to be a rapist, then it almost becomes a better outlet than, like, killing people. You have this animalistic, violent urge. Even looking here, I've done it with animals. In sex, he drops himself to the level of an animal. Primal, animalistic. That is what sex is maybe to him. And so, now that he is old, he is dying, perhaps, or just aging, less able, the rage is still there. Because Bukowski has this deep-seated rage from that same thing, being hurt and never knowing why. And so, this rage can only express itself potentially as the same thing, as the same kind of outburst. And we look at him stooping down to a violent, animalistic level. Swastika star. There's a violence, an evil, a just pure, unbridled violence in the swastika. And then there's also the treatment of Jews by Nazis as something as low as an animal. And that he carries with him. This violence, this animalistic urge to burn spiders, to cause pain, to see something nice and sweet and perfect and destroy it and hurt it and use it and have control over it. That perhaps is sex to Charles Bukowski. Which would make this a very honest, very sort of tragic poem to look into the mind of someone who sees it as such. But that maybe unifies some of these ideas. Maybe because he obviously felt alienated, he wants to challenge everyday normalcy. I think that's potentially something we could infer about Bukowski. He was alienated, he was pushed out, he was never normal, and then he becomes this artist, he becomes this person who is different. It only makes sense. We could speculate about why Bukowski thought the things he does. And some of his poems do maybe indicate that. We can't be sure, because he is dead under a grave that says don't try. But that's possible. That's possible. Tari, if you're still around, since I know, like, initially the interpretation of just, like, the fuck everyone was less satisfying for you. Does this interpretation seem more like it encompasses the poem, or do you still feel like this is in some way missing something? If you're around. I'm curious. Because I find that those gut feelings in interpretation do deeply matter. Say, like, I think we're still missing something, then we probably are. And sometimes it's hard for me to tell when, like, I'm doing it. We run with these things and get tunnel vision toward an idea. If you're around, Tari. If not, that's cool. But the connection between sex and violence is interesting. It seems like it's supported in the text. It seems like that covers everything. I did it in fireplaces, on fire escapes, in cornfields, in mother's bedroom, with mother, sometimes. Bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne. Over the sink of the men's crapper, in a train passing through Utah. Done it sober, potted, crazy, sane. Done it when I wanted to and when I haven't wanted to. I am satisfied with that interpretation, personally. This violence, this release, deeply tied into being an outcast, having felt similar violence. It kind of ties all those pieces together. But are there other ideas? And if not, then if we can't come up with anything else to challenge our interpretation, then generally this is a safe place to assume that we've probably come to one that's decent. Of course, it's hard to challenge something that we've created. This is the most difficult thing, which is why sometimes it's very helpful to ask chat for help. And that's why when you had your interpretation pop by with the start of just fuck everyone, I challenge it, and we come to something slightly more nuanced, perhaps. Maybe you still hold by that interpretation, but I think it doesn't account for as well for maybe the title and the start and some of the ending lines. So, I'll read it again. This has been, unless anyone's still typing, I'll give another minute. Drink some water. Okay. This has been Swastika Star, Button to My Ass, our interpretation of, by Charles Bukowski. Sitting around here, burning spiders to death with my cigar. I can hardly believe that all your pussies are as sweet as mine used to be. I did it in fireplaces, on fire escapes, in cornfields, in mother's bedroom, with mother. Sometimes. Between bomb explosions at Nantes and Saint Etienne, over the sink of the men's crapper in a train passing through Utah. I've done it sober, potted, crazy, and sane. I've done it when I wanted to and when I haven't wanted to. I've done it with women twice my age and with women half my age. I've done it with animals. I've done it with dead meat, beef steak, and melted butter, and I've used my hand. Now, the only things that stand up around here are the rods that hold up the lampshades. I am going to rob a bank or beat hell out of a blind man any day now. And they'll never know why. Swastika Star, Buttoned to My Ass by Charles Bukowski. Quite a poem. I like it. But you'll be hard-pressed to find me saying I don't like a poem. But I do. I thought it was enjoyable. Interesting. A challenging poem to analyze, in fact. Hard to quite find what things we're referring to. And of course I could still be deeply missing things and interpretations, but I'm satisfied with that interpretation.
Thanks for listening to me and my thoughts on Bukowski. Make sure to check out the rest of the series if you enjoyed, and follow or stop by Twitch if you want to see more. See you there.